Salvete, discípuli, soy el Tutorísimo, tu profesor favorito, y en el día de hoy te traigo el siguiente tema. Unit 7, the Catholic Monarchs and the Great Expeditions. And as you know, you have both these notes and the presentation we're going to use available for downloading in your virtual classroom. So let's jump into it, since this unit is going to be a bit long. So we're going to study in this unit the Catholic Monarchs and the Great Expedition, starting with the first one, the Catholic Monarchs, los Reyes Católicos, who are Fernando II de Aragón and Isabel I de Castilla. First, we're going to talk about the Dynastic Union of both kingdoms, both the Kingdom of Castilla, here in yellow, and the Kingdom of Aragon, or la Corona de Aragón, here in green. This is the situation of the Iberian Peninsula in 1492. This king and queen, Isabel and Fernando, got married in 1469. Here you have them from the TV series Isabel, de Televisión Española. And so they, both their kingdoms, Castilla and Aragon, became part of the same dynastic union, not a territorial union, since each of these each of the two kingdoms maintained their own laws and their own system and their own institutions, but they both shared the same kings, Isabel and Fernando. And they were both, Isabel was both Queen of Castilla and Aragon, and Fernando was both king of Castilla and Aragon too. And one of their main projects was seeking for the territorial unity of the Iberian Peninsula. To do so, they made this dynastic union. It became effective in 1479 because this was the time they were both in charge of their thrones. But they also need, in order to do so, the annexation of the Kingdom of Granada, the Kingdom of Navarre, and the Kingdom of Portugal. They're going to achieve the first two ones, but the third will become later at the time of Felipe II. So first, they're going to conquer the Muslim Kingdom of Granada, the Nasrid Kingdom, because that was the last dynasty of the Kingdom of Granada, and they managed to do so in 1492 after a 10 years war that started back in 1482. They defeated the last king of Granada, Boabdil el Chico, who had to left the city of Granada on the 2nd of January of 1492, el 2 de enero de 1492. Then later, Fernando occupied, once Isabel was dead, he occupied militarily the Kingdom of Navarra. He conquered the Kingdom of Granada in 1512, and in 1515 it was annexed to the Kingdom of Castilla, because Fernando was the regent of Castilla. Before that, he conquered also the Roussillon and the Cerdaña to the French in 1493. Also, in order to achieve the union with Portugal, they tried to do so with a marriage policy. They gave Isabel and María de Aragón, both their daughters, as wives of the King of Portugal, Manuel I de Portugal, Manuel the First of Portugal. First Isabel, but she died, so Maria, the youngest, was also married to him. This, as I said, will be successful 100 years later during the reign of Felipe II. Their international policy was focused on two areas of expansion, the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. In the Mediterranean, first, they were interested in Italy because it was one of the main directions of expansion of the crown of Aragon, and we managed to seize the kingdom of Naples, el Reino de Nápoles, in 1505, after a war against France. Also, they have to deal with the piracy of the Barbary pirates. Barbary, Berberia, is this region of North Africa, the coast of North Africa, where the bases of these Muslim pirates were located. So, the Catholic monarchs conquered Melilla, Oran, Algiers, and Bujia. In these dates you have over here, 1497, 1509, and 1510. They are not very important, but if you know them, it is better. In the Atlantic, they were focused. Well, before that, the conquest of Naples was achieved because of the leadership of Gonzalo Fernández de Córdoba, El Gran Capitán, the leader of the tercios, of the troops, the Spanish troops, well, the Aragonese troops in Italy. Oran was conquered by Cardenal Cisneros, which was also a regent, and as I was saying, in the Atlantic, they were focused on the rivalry with the Portuguese. We have signed, with the Castilians, we have signed the Treaty of Alcazovas in 1497. The Portuguese recognized the annexation of the Canary Islands, whose conquest was finished in 1496. It had started in 1415, way earlier in the 15th century, but it ended in the year 1496. In exchange of that, we couldn't sail further south from the parallel of the Canary Islands. And at last, the Catholic kingdoms established a lot of, or the Catholic monarchs established a lot of alliances between a lot of European countries by marrying all of their sons. Well, their son Juan and their daughters, Juana, Maria, Isabel, and Catalina, to the most important kings of Europe, except the French ones, because remember, the French are our enemies back on, or were our enemies back on those days. As you can see here, these are the son and daughters of the Catholic monarchs, and all the objective of this policy is to surround the French, who are our enemies. In the organization of the new monarchy, they tried to reinforce the royal power, to impose their authority. Because of that, no more land was granted to nobles and new royal institutions were created. Among them, there were the Council of Castile, El Consejo de Castilla. It's a group of lawyers who advise the king. Then we have the Royal Treasury, la Contaduría General de Hacienda, which was responsible for tax collection. La Real Audiencia, which is the court that imparts justice. There were two of them, the one in Granada and the one in Valladolid. Well, first in Ciudad Real, which was moved to Granada after its conquest. Then, los corregidores, which are the royal representatives in the cities, in the municipalities. And finally, la Santa Hermandad, nada de esto del Holy Brotherhood, which is an armed group who pursue criminals and guarantee the security of the roads. Here you have a chart showing this. So we have these councils, los consejos. We also have the Cortes, which come from the Middle Ages, and this is an important institution, which is the viceroys, los virreyes, or viceroyalties, o sea, viceroys or viceroyalties, which are the virreinatos. Virreinato, viceroyalty, is part of the territory of it's one of the territories of the Spanish monarchy, and it is led by a viceroy, which is the royal representatives in this territory. So it's the person who acts in the name of the king in a specific territory, mostly outside Castilla. So there was a viceroy of Aragon, a viceroy of Italy, of Naples, of Flanders, of America. Well, we will see that later. This is the Santa Hermandad. It's like the police of that time. And also, a professional army was created. This is the first time that the state can maintain a professional army. This is the Real Audiencia of Granada as an example, and in Aragon they were the practice of pactismo was maintained, which is a medieval practice in which the public charges were elected by luck, insaculación, but this is not very important. Finally, the last project of the Catholic monarchs is the achievement of the religious uniformity, because there were several religions in Spain or in the Iberian Peninsula back in that day, mostly Catholics, but there were also Jews and Muslims. So first they're going to establish the Spanish Inquisition, la Inquisición Española, in 1478. These were, as you know, because we studied that in the previous unit, they were the ones who pursued the crimes against the church, or pursued the heresy, or pursued the ones who did not practice their faith correctly. And as you know, their judgments are called autos de fe. Then the Catholic monarchs forced the Jews to convert to Christianity in 1492. The ones who did not want to convert, most of them, were expelled from Spain, from the Iberian Peninsula, from the kingdoms of the Catholic monarchs. And the ones who agreed to convert were called conversos in Castellano. This happened in 1492, shortly after the conquest of Granada. With this, El Edicto de Granada of 1492. And we were not the first who expelled the Jews from their territories, as you can see. Finally, the Muslims that remained in Granada were forced also to be baptized. These Muslims, these new Christians, these former Muslims who converted, are called or were known as Moriscos. And these Moriscos were forced to convert in 1502, or then otherwise they were forced to go into exile. Even though they converted, they still maintain a lot of costumes, for example the dressing that they had before they were Christians, which this led to a problem later during the reign of Felipe II. This is the summary. Remember, if you want, you can check the presentation or you can pause the video. The second part is the great expeditions, related, most of them, to the discovery of America. Why at this time, at the end of the 15th century, there were a lot of geographical explorations? Well, they were mostly led by Castilla and Portugal, and the main reason was the cut or the halt in trading following the Silk Route, la Ruta de la Seda. This trade route was stopped or was forbidden to be used by the Europeans since the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Turks back in 1453. The Europeans were still interested a lot to find a sea route instead of this land route to the Indies, to India and to China. So this is because of the expansion of the Ottoman Empire. So they tried to, these are maps of this time of the 15th century. So since they couldn't use this land route, they tried to find a sea route in which they thought it was possible, bordering Africa from the south, or later with Columbus sailing westwards. So this, combined with the sea navigation, the improvements in sea navigation, such as the cartography or the compass or the astrolabe. If you want to know how an astrolabe works, here you have a video. And also the improvement in these Portland charts, these special maps in which all these harbors are depicted, this led to improvements in these explorations. Also, new types of ships were built. For example, we have here a caravel, the ones that Columbus used, and also the Portuguese, and the carracks. The first one to achieve Irregulars in these explorations were the Portuguese. The Portuguese tried to reach the Indies sailing or finding a route sailing to the south and bordering Africa. To achieve this, there were several explorations, and the first one who found a route, or who found that there was a way to sail through or west to the east of Africa, was Bartolomé Diaz, who reached the Cape of Good Hope, which is the southernmost point of Africa, in 1488. Bartolomé Diaz. And the one who found the actual route to India, to the Indies, was Vasco da Gama in 1498. These two guys. This is the Cape of Good Hope, and this is Vasco da Gama arriving to India for the first time to Calicut in 1498. And then we have the famous Columbus project. Christopher Columbus is a Genoese, well, we think it's a Genoese sailor from Genoa, and he had this project, and he thought, since he knows the Earth is a sphere, he said that he could reach the Indies sailing westwards, instead of sailing to the south, sailing to the west. So he presented his project to the Portuguese king, but the king rejected it. So he went to the Catholic monarch. Here he is in the court of Fernando el Católico, and after a lot of discussions, this is the project of Columbus. This is how Columbus thought the world was. He thought he could sail westwards through the Atlantic Oceans to reach Cathay and Zipango, which are China and Japan. So he finally convinced the Catholic monarch, convinced Isabel la Católica, and he signed the Capitulaciones de Santa Fe in 1492. Santa Fe is a town near Granada. See, this meant that Columbus, in exchange of the money and the support of the Catholic monarchs to his voyage, he received the titles of Viceroy and Admiral of the Ocean Sea, Virrey y Almirante de la Mar Océana, as well as a tenth of the wealth he would earn from this voyage. So after this, he gathered a crew. Well, here's a fragment of this Capitulaciones de Santa Fe. So he gathered 3 ships, these 3 vessels, La Pinta, La Niña, y La Santa María, and he left the peninsula in the harbor or the dock of Palos de la Frontera, Palos de Moguer, the 3rd of August or the August the 3rd of 1492. After sailing for more than a month, or almost 2 months, he reached America. Finally, this is Rodrigo de Triana, the one who first saw the land, and this is his flag, the 12th or October 12th of 1492. Here is a fragment of the movie, the 1492, The Conquest of Paradise by Ridley Scott, and he arrived to the island that the Indians call Wanani. Which one is this island? We don't know. The recent studies say this is this one, Watling's Island, but it could be any of these ones which are surrounded by a yellow circle. And he called this island San Salvador, and after that he went to explore, well, these islands are in today's Bahamas, and after that he went exploring of all of these Antilles. He built El Fuerte Navidad in La Española, or Hispaniola in English, and then he went back in his first voyage. After that, he was received by the Catholic monarchs in Barcelona, and he informed them about his success. So, well, and this is another fragment of the TV series Isabel. And after that, he made 3 other voyages in 1493, 1498, and 1502. This is the second one. This is the third one, in which he reached the continent for the first time in today's Venezuela. And finally, the fourth one, in which he explored Central America. But after that we have a problem. As you remember, by the Treaty of Alcazovas, the Castilians were forbidden to sail south of the Canary Islands, but all these lands that Columbus explored were south of this parallel. So the Catholic monarchs went to the Pope, so the Pope recognized these new lands to be part of Castile. The Portuguese were angry, so they negotiated a new treaty, which is the Treaty of Tordesillas, el Tratado de Tordesillas of 1494. By this treaty, this one, they set up a vertical line, a meridian, this meridian, which is first shown in the Cantino planisphere, and by this meridian, this means that all the lands discovered west of this meridian were or belonged to Castilla, and all the lands discovered east of this meridian belong to Portugal. This meridian is located 370 leagues west from the islands of Cabo Verde. And after that, Columbus died thinking he had reached the Indies. He didn't know, or he never knew, that he has discovered a new continent. But first, we need to know that he was not the first European to reach America. First were the Vikings, who reached there, the northern part of America, back in the 11th and 10th century. We have archaeological remains in Newfoundland, today's Canada. How did we acknowledge we were in a new continent? Well, first, because of the explorations of Vasco Núñez de Balboa, who discovered what he called the South Sea, which is the Mar del Sur, the Pacific Ocean, back in 1513. And since there was another sea, another big piece of water, a big body of water behind the newly discovered land, it had to be, there were some doubts about if we had reached the Indies. This is the first site of the South Sea. But the one who stated that these newly discovered lands were a new continent was an Italian geographer, Amerigo Vespucci, or in Spanish Americo Vespuccio, who wrote to some letters in which he said he had these new lands were part of a new continent. And this is the first atlas in which this new continent is known as, in his or after this Amerigo Vespucci, as America. And this name has lasted till nowadays. And here you have the summary of this second part, and this is the end with El Mapa de Juan de la Cosa, the first map that depicts the newly discovered continent and the new islands that Juan de la Cosa himself have visited with the first Columbus trip. And this is the end. Y esto es todo. Ya sabéis que para cualquier tipo de duda me podéis escribir a donde siempre, al correo, a la virtual o incluso al Instagram. Seguidme en todas mis redes sociales, que las tengo aquí abajo, as usual, y nos vemos en el próximo vídeo que voy a grabar a continuación. Gracias por haberlo visto, si te has llegado hasta el final, y nos vemos en el próximo. Adiós.